Well, today's guest is one of those people who quietly sits and gets on with doing extraordinary things. No fuss, no fanfare, just a slightly stubborn refusal to sit still. Kevin Bell, busy slacker by his own admission, surfer, photographer, community grafter, almost ex-footballer, and a man whose version of a casual idea somehow turned into a paddleboarding 200 miles from Abersoch to Poynton. Yeah, 200 miles on a paddleboard. Let that land for a second. Back in 2019, Kevin set off from Abersoch Beach, not for headlines, not for ego, but to raise money for Cancer Research UK. What followed was part endurance, part mental warfare, and entirely driven by purpose. But that's only one chapter. This podcast is also about what's been his life since uni in Aberdeen all the way through to Abersoch today. From his earlier days via the University of Aberdeen to a stint in a estate agency and more latterly into the world of publishing and events as executive editor with Sensations, Kevin's journey is anything but linear. These days, he's right at the heart of the Abersoch community, helping shape events that have grown from local favourites into nationally recognised fixtures. And if he's not doing that, there's a fair chance you'll find him out with a camera, on a board, picking up rubbish from Porthnigel, or planning the next adventure with his wife Sally, usually somewhere not particularly convenient. He's not regular dunker, but he's very much cut from the same cloth. Community-driven, quietly determined, and always leaning into something that matters. So today we're getting into the why behind the paddle, what pushes someone to keep going when most would stop, and whether challenges like that are ever really over and done. Kevin, welcome to Dunker's podcast.
Thank you. I'm a much better person than I thought I was.
well, at least the headlines treat you very, very much with respect.
Yeah, and for the record, I do it for a bit of fanfare and a bit of ego. Love a bit of that. But yeah, all the rest is probably true-ish.
Excellent. I don't know whether all our facts are absolutely spot on, but hopefully you'll correct me as we go along. So before we get into the paddleboard experience, because that's obviously something that you're well known in the village for, and have been for 6-7 years now. Why Aberdeen Uni? Scottish roots?
No, more too much fishing, if I'm honest with you. I was a reasonably clever lad academically, but probably where the busy slacker bit comes in, to be honest. I love the other side of my life. I've always run away from my studies, run away from work as fast and as soon as I can. Always doing my best as I got older. But I think in my mid-teens, I maybe got a bit too much into my fishing and my football and my cricket, and didn't study quite as hard as I should have done. So I was meant to be going to Reading University. And the reason I chose Reading was because the River Thames and the River Kennard meet there. So it's one of the best fishing locations in the UK. However, I didn't quite get the grades needed. And I'd somewhere in my list of universities put University of Aberdeen on a whim, when you fill the last couple of boxes in on the form. And I was a very surprised young man a few months later to discover myself on a 14-hour train journey to the University of Aberdeen, which was a lot colder, a lot further away, a lot less friendly to what was a coarse fisherman in those days like me. But it was a great experience. So I didn't so much choose the University of Aberdeen as my marks chose where I was able to go.
And no regrets by the sounds of things.
Not at all. Loved it. Yeah. No, because Aberdeen, I think, is one of the very few universities where you can learn to ski. There was a ski club that went over to Glenshee every Wednesday, and on the Saturday as well, I'd go if the football was called off, which it was quite often because our grounds were regularly frozen up there. So you could go over, as with everything in those days, I think it was virtually free with the university, learn to ski, and that was a big part of my life for a while. It took me off to Switzerland after university for a bit, skiing and living the life of a ski bum and so on. So yeah, it turned out good. Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
So this busy slacker is just sort of been threaded through that part of your life. At least do you think that's where it started? Or
yeah, well, like I say, I've always, as I've got older, I've got better at working it out. I think, which is, I think you should take what you do very seriously and do it as well as you can, but you shouldn't take yourself too seriously. So I think I've always been pretty good at getting my work done, doing it well now. I learned from that teenage experience. and then going off and do the things that really lift my soul, lift my spirit, like sitting by a lake fishing, standing in a river fishing, surfing for the last 25 years or so, out on my paddleboard, sailing. I've sailed all my life, bit of windsurfing, playing cricket. I've played cricket for 40 odd years, football. So take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously, because within a day or two of leaving any organisation, however important you were, and I've been in leadership teams, you're gone, no one cares, they move on.
They do,
so
don't they?
Point in, I know too many people who've sacrificed their life to work, friends and family, and lost a lot. And honestly, I'm sure when they reflect on it, they must think, not sure about that.
No.
So that's kind of what I mean. I'm a busy slacker in the sense I do lots of stuff. I'm a bit of a slacker in the sense that I try and deliver work with the minimum of effort, but I think I do it pretty well these days, because I've honed it, unlike that teenage boy who ended up in Aberdeen.
And Sally, did she greet you or meet you, and you were sort of still living that life, or did you meet Sally later on?
I think I was this is embarrassing, I'm not absolutely sure. I think I just left university when we met, maybe 22, something like that. And Sally is fabulously beautiful now, in my opinion. She was ludicrously so in those days. So I was pretty smitten. But nevertheless, I did go off to Switzerland for 8 to 9 months to go skiing and work in a ski resort. So we sort of got together a bit. I went away. I don't think I told her, we weren't like close at that stage, so I didn't sort of say I'm off to Switzerland.
Oh, right.
Kind of disappeared, really. And then we met again the next summer, where she told me off a few times for disappearing, and we kind of got together after that.
Right.
We've been very happy together ever since.
There was a thread of intention on her part that already sown, was there?
Yeah, well, on my part as well. I just wasn't very good at communicating.
Yeah. Funny how life takes you, because you've been in the communication business as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at comms normally and self-publicity and stuff. And I think I probably told her I was a great guy and the very person she wanted, but then I cleared off.
Yeah, exactly. And
anyway, I'm glad she waited. Is the most important point to make here. I'm very privileged that she waited.
Yeah. And I'm sure she rues the day in her sometimes when she met you, because you probably sound as though you take off now on occasions, do you?
Well, I think I've always personally think relationships work best where you spend a lot of time together, do a lot of stuff together, but also have a bit of distance. And I think probably in various times I've overstretched that. I used to go off to the continent carp fishing on big public reservoirs for a week or two at a time, where you camp out by a giant lake and catch these huge 40-pound carp. It's quite a challenge. You're sort of living pretty rough and so on. And I've done that a few times. On reflection, maybe when the kids were younger, I perhaps could have just gone to the local lake for the afternoon instead. But I always think I came back a better, more interesting person. And Sal has always supported me in stuff I've done. And I don't think I've kind of abused that. But I maybe would tickle that a bit if I reflected and had it again, if you like.
I do think there might be a slight angle if she was sitting next to you at the moment, and she equally could get hold of the microphone and give her side of the story.
Maybe, but equally, I genuinely think, and in the same way she does stuff, that I love. I'm a big Manchester United fan. Sal's had a season ticket at Manchester City for over 50 years, so we've got quite a contrast there. She's still got a season ticket, goes off to City games a lot and so on. So we've always had a little bit of distance and difference at times. And I actually think that's good for your relationship. And it's the thing that makes you love them, isn't it? I think one of the reasons that Sal liked me is because I did do all this stuff, still do all this stuff.
Yeah.
I still get really excited by a new song on the radio. I still get really excited about a new surf paddleboard coming out that I want to buy. Sal gets really excited about the new signing for City. So it's about finding a way, isn't it? Do your stuff and try and stay together. I think we've managed to do both.
Yeah, I think that sounds as a really successful recipe. And Hell's Mouth or Porthnagle, was that part of you finding something deeper in yourselves?
Yeah, it was actually. I first came to Abersoch in 1961, so I was only 2. And actually, Abersoch nearly killed me so I should hate the place. Really.
You really should. You're right.
We were camping. Mum and Dad were big on camping. We used to go. They were both in education, so we'd have really long holidays in the continent every year. Not in some glamorous, super expensive, because once you got there, if you were camping, it cost you no more to be there than it did at home. So we'd go for 4 or 5 weeks, and then come back, have a few days tidying up, and then we'd kind of round off the holidays with another week in Wales. In this instance, it was Abersoch the first time I came. Stayed on the farm in Sarnbag. My mum was always she was quite ahead of her time, my mum, big into her Eastern religions, she wouldn't have described herself as a hippie, but quite keen on sort of alternative lifestyle, alternative diet. So when she discovered you could get unpasteurised milk from this farm, she was all into that. Yeah, let's get onto that. It's brilliant. It's not got all these chemicals in it, had all these processes done or whatever. So we drank the unpasteurised milk, and we didn't know it at the time, but it gave me a disease called brucellosis.
Okay.
Which took nearly 18 months to diagnose, by which time I was in a pretty bad way. It's not usually fatal, and partly because it's now been nearly eradicated and they know how to treat it. But in those days, unless you came across a doctor who happened to know it, then there was a good chance it wouldn't be diagnosed. In my case, it wasn't for nearly 18 months. And I was in a pretty bad way, and it has affected me physically all my life to a degree. I struggle with my joints and stuff. It left a bit of a legacy, and it meant I developed much slower than I should have done for a few years. But luckily, we stumbled on a doctor who had actually done his thesis on it or whatever, and he said, that's brucellosis.
Yeah.
I went into hospital for a few weeks, had antibiotics poured into me for, I think it was 6 weeks. And after that, I was fine, but it did leave a bit of a legacy. So technically, I shouldn't really like Abersoch, should I? But I had such a good time both then and in future times that it's kept me coming back. But getting back to why I love Hell's Mouth, so we used to come in the early 60s, carried on coming on and off, right through to probably my mid-teens, in the mid-70s. And then, you go your different way. My mum and dad moved to the Lake District, used to spend a lot of time there, sailing and so on. We had a little place by Coniston there, which was great fun. We kept our boats there. So kind of had a bit of a separation from Abersoch. And then when our own kids were little, we had a similar thing. We'd been on holiday on the continent, had a great time, wanted to get back to a beautiful beach, sat there in Manchester at work saying, where should we go? Friend I worked with, Sarah, she said, go to Abersoch. And I remembered then how beautiful the place was. I was like, why haven't I thought of that? Went there, had a week here. Absolutely loved it again. As always, I think even though looking out the window now, it isn't. In my head, the sun always shines in Abersoch.
You're right.
I don't know if you know what I mean by that.
Absolutely.
Comes out, it
There's
comes
a sunny
alive.
disposition about the whole place.
So you feel like it's sunny all the time.
Absolutely.
And we did that, and then we started renting cottages here with Sal's sister and her family, extended family, which eventually we moved as the families got bigger to Redolly, the big farmhouse behind Hell's Mouth. So we used to walk down to the beach there every day, a bit of a trek, and it just flicked a switch in me. I suddenly realised that those big horizons, the endless skies, the big sunsets, were actually what turned me on more now than the little secret pools I used to love fishing, sneaking off deep into the woods to a little hidden river or a little secret pool fishing. Still love doing that, but actually the big skies, the big horizons had kind of penetrated my soul, and they were what turned me on. I can still remember we were actually staying a weekend at Tyndon, the big house just around the corner from us that backs onto Hell's Mouth.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
One of the little cottages there.
Yeah.
Perfect for surfers. And I can still remember, I was thinking about this on the way here, running along the beach. It was early autumn and it was sunny and there was a little bit of a breeze and I had my arms out and there was a song by the Gigolo Ants called It's Where I'll Find My Heaven at the time.
Really?
And I was sprinting around like an aeroplane and the kids were following me and we're all singing It's Where I'll Find My Heaven. And it's stayed like that ever since.
Your happy place.
Yes, exactly.
It's now your home place.
It is, very lucky.
Yeah. So, and that obviously is what gets you up in the morning, because one thing I do ask people when on the podcast is what does get you up in the morning?
But what gets me up in the morning is Sol bringing me granola with a bit of luck. But as I say, I equally do it for her. But yeah, it is. And in fact, I absolutely have to now because I'll never be an early bird, struggle with early mornings. I'm more of a night bird. But I do this little surf check on Instagram, Porthnagle Surf Check.
Okay.
So I do a daily little check on the way. I don't pretend to be a surf forecaster. That's the job of the boys in the village at West Coast Surf and Phil at Abersoch Water Sports and so on. But I just do a record of what it's like at that moment in time, take a little video, take a few pictures. So I do that every morning. So that kind of gets my head working, gets my feet working. I walk down to whatever bit of the beach I fancy that day.
Yeah.
Take my photographs. Hopefully there's people surfing, in which case I'll stay for a while with my good camera, try and catch some pics of people surfing. I'm no Phil Boyd, nothing like that. But I'm not bad at capturing a surfer in action. So yeah, that's what gets me up in the morning. The fact I live in such a beautiful place, going up to the upstairs lounge, looking out over the bay, it still lifts my soul every single morning. And then, I put my big coat on, put my boots on, wander down to the beach, take my photographs, maybe do a bit of a litter pick, maybe collect some driftwood too. I make rustic furniture out of driftwood and stuff.
Okay.
All my life. So I'll collect a bit of that and get on with a project.
So do you have a rustic furniture showroom that people can come and...
Not anymore. I used to have.
Did you?
I've always dabbled in, as well as having a kind of corporate career doing stuff, I've always dabbled in sort of business and other stuff. And I had a place called Wood on the Water, a kind of studio and workshop on the Macclesfield Canal.
Okay.
Funny enough, the place I paddleboarded back to on the hometown paddle, where I used to make sort of cool rustic furniture, not the kind of nailed together stuff, more kind of more of an American style where you use round mortise and tenons and create really simple furniture, big slab of wood, 4 legs, from driftwood or whatever, and you get a very simple, beautiful piece of furniture. So I used to do that. So I did have a showroom. Now, bit of a hiatus at present. The thing I've done more recently, I make the odd little table for people, and I may do one for a project that's going on at present with a tree that came down at Abersoch. There's a project there that is based at the gallery, which will see people making bits of furniture from and so on from that wood. People genuinely far more talented than me, serious professional woodworkers and craftspeople, like John from Making Little, that some people will know. But I might have a go at doing one of my very, very simple tables, as part of that. I love doing that. But
the fact you're going to surround yourself with these people who are equally as absorbed into this sort of skill and these arts.
Much more so, in truth. I dip in and out.
But it's going to rub off, isn't it?
And the little thing I do that some people might have seen is I make the wooden footprints that say leave only footprints on various beaches.
Okay.
So there's 3 or 4 on Hell's Mouth.
Right.
There's a couple I've got to put back up at what used to be called Footprints, the beach cafe. They got knocked over when the barrier came down. There should still be some on Abersoch Beach. There's a couple over on beaches on the north coast. So I make these literally footprints.
We've seen them.
So I do those. As those gradually fall apart and I get older and have more time for that and less time for surfing, which, as I said to you earlier, never seems to quite come, that moment. I want to stay on the water as long as I can.
I think that was a real sort of underscore when you told me earlier on, just before we came onto the podcast, that your dad was mid to late 80s and he was still in a canoe or a kayak?
He used to live in the Lake District, and we used to he was a sailing instructor as growing up, so we used to do loads of sailing and kayaking and canoeing and fishing and stuff in the lakes. And then, unfortunately, my mum died relatively young, as in it left him as a guy retired on his own up in the Lake District, which he carried on with for a few years, but he moved down to Kent to be near my brother and particularly my sister, bought a beach hut at Whitstable, a bit like the beach huts here, had a little sit on top of it. And right today, I think he was 88, 87, 88. He was still going out and he's sit on top with his little dog on the foredeck. Not very far in the end, 20 yards out, but a bit like me. And I'm sure it's where I got a lot of it from. Immersed in the sea, sat there. Yeah. He'd been in the Navy in the Second World War. So it's kind of
water was really in his DNA, wasn't it?
And taught sailing and so on. So I kind of think that I'll perhaps get more into my rustic furniture, do more writing and so on when I'm in my late 80s. Because until then, I'm planning on getting out on my paddle boards and my little sailing boat I have here. Yeah.
So is there going to be another paddleboard adventure? I mean, we're going to get to this because it's going to grab people, I know. It certainly grabbed my imagination when, because we were living down here at the time. Yeah. And
well, you were one of the people who came and supported us, didn't you, when we were setting off and stuff? Really, loads of people were so good and so kind that made it possible and supported us.
So the people who weren't there and weren't part of it, let's just sort of wind back and let's just try and capture that sort of the reason, the moment. I mean, to start with, there's an obvious answer. There's an obvious question. Did anybody think that you're absolutely crazy?
Yeah, plenty of people did actually. But a few years earlier, I worked the last sort of corporate-ish type job I had was in Stoke-on-Trent. And my dad had just passed away. It wasn't a tragedy. He was old. He was 90. But he just passed away. And obviously that impacts on, and I was particularly close to him. So he just passed from pulmonary fibrosis. And Sal's dad was suffering from cancer and wasn't far off leaving us as well. So I did a much smaller project called the paddleboard commute from outside our house on the same Macclesfield Canal. I arrived back at on the hometown paddle. So I set off from Poynton and paddled to work in Stoke-on-Trent on the canal system through Cheshire and through Staffordshire.
Nice.
Stopping off in little hotels on the way. So that wasn't particularly arduous. It's only I think it was about 40 miles because of the circuitous route of the canals. But it was much harder than it should have been because I did it in December just after various things had happened.
Yeah.
And the canal froze completely solid. I had to cancel setting off twice. When I eventually set off, I literally had to have people breaking the ice for me and stuff to keep going. And I was doing it all in a work suit with a trilby on and a little
as you would. Yeah.
I'll find some photographs for you.
Yeah, please do. So
that was the paddleboard commute.
Amazing.
Did that, raised a fair bit of money on Just Giving for the Pulmonary Fibrosis Trust, I think it was called.
Okay.
And then Sal was walking alongside with a bucket, and various friends did it, collecting cash off people. And we donated that to Cancer Research UK in respect of a dad's issues at the time. So I'd done that, and then we came here. We'd been here a little while. I'd really got into paddleboarding. I'd started I was probably one of the first ones into it about 25 years ago. I saw someone paddleboarding at Macross. Never seen it before 25 years ago. Couldn't believe how cool it looked. It looked like walking on water. So I bought one straight away from Brookbank Canoes in Stockport, long gone, sadly, and learned to do it. So, and then gradually got more and more into it and into surfing it to replace, conventional prone surfing. And then my daughter got diagnosed with cancer, which was a pretty alarming time.
Absolutely, it must be.
Relatively young in a mid to late 20s. So I kind of, like most parents, you want to be supportive on a personal day-to-day basis, but also I just felt like I needed to do something. If I'm honest, that obviously I wanted to raise money, and that was the purpose, but also to help my own sort of headspace, really.
Sure.
As though doing this was doing something. It clearly wasn't really, other than raising the money, but it
absolutely indirectly it was.
Yeah, it was a project
honest.
that lifted us a bit. She loved the fact I was doing it and so on, and I think that captured a few people. And people were amazing, Phil and Emma from Abersoch Water Sports were so supportive and helpful in planning the trip and so on.
Right.
So that's why I did it, and I don't know can't remember now. I guess we hadn't moved here that long, and I just thought, I used to live by this lovely stretch of water. I worked out that you could paddle all the way from Abersoch to Poynton, virtually without getting off the water. And so, I decided to
just
do it.
have a go.
Yeah,
well, we'll know a bit more. I think where you live actually shapes the type of challenges that you take on, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, we lived in Higher Poynton because as a kid, I used to get the bus up to the Macclesfield Canal, right by where we eventually lived. Okay. And that was one of my little adventure places. I'd have my fishing gear on the bus as a little lad. In those days, you probably went on the bus on your own, a bit younger, to be honest. And that was my little adventure playground. I'd go up there. We lived in a pretty nice place anyway in Chilhune, but this lovely countryside by the water, catching fish. It was like my adventure place. So that's the reason we actually moved to Higher Poynton when Sal and I got married. We used to
because
meet
of access to.
It was just a place I'd loved as a kid, and we'd come to love together. And it was by the water, and as you say, that was a conscious choice, because water's shaped my life to a very great extent.
Okay, so we've got a picture now that you're sitting there. You've got people like Phil and Emma who helped to plan this out. You've got it in your mind that this is what you're going to do, and obviously the first thing that you've got to sort of think is, well, where do I start from and where do I go from? I mean, literally, because where did you start from?
So we started from I think we started from Footprints, actually. Yeah,
I think you were.
From the beach cafe there. I think we did. And then paddled across to Mickey's Cafe and did a collection there, which was a kind of theme. We sometimes took a bit of a diversion so we could get the cash buckets out to actually collect cash along with the...
You didn't carry the cash buckets,
No, so
did
that's where the incredibly brilliant Sally Bell was a superstar at that and generally looking after me on the whole trip. She was incredible, driving the camper van every day alongside me, meeting up where we finished up. We'd then sleep in the camper van.
Okay. So were those stops planned, or was it when you just got absolutely whacked out and you thought?
No, I know. No. We planned them quite carefully because obviously there's tides and so on that you have to be aware of. So, funny enough, I've just written an article for Abersoch Life, the magazine that's in the shops right now, about coming into the stretch from Porther, Whistling Sands to Porthuskadon. And I got it wrong, the tide there. I left Whistling Sands. I thought the tide had turned, it hadn't. And I went nowhere for about an hour. It's like on a conveyor belt. The tide flies down that north coast. It flies down it. So, yeah, you have to be really careful with the planning. That's where Phil was particularly helpful. He understands all that. His own water knowledge and his lifeboat stuff and everything. So he was really helpful. There was a book called Kayaking North Wales that annoyingly did a similar trip or part of it in reverse. But by kind of mirror imaging the advice in that, you could work out where to go, when to go, which period of time, of tide that you needed to be on. So, yeah, it all made sense. And also it needed to be a sensible distance. I think it was about sort of 10 to 15 miles each day was typically what we did.
Right.
I was unlucky. It was in June, July, I think. And the wind was just uncharacteristically phenomenally strong for almost the entire trip, and of course in completely the wrong direction, howling from the north down the north coast. So the whole trip was actually much harder than it should have been. A couple of times I had to just get out, get off, wait for a few hours. I had to go back and do one or two stages, kind of go stage in advance, go back and know when the wind had died. So it took a bit of knitting together on the hoof, really, day by day.
As the weather allowed.
Yeah, exactly. But again, that's where people were brilliant. Like, I remember Dave Lammercraft, a friend, he came and met me with some brownies he'd cooked for me, just little things like that when you're out in the middle of nowhere.
The brownie keeps you going.
Yeah, my pal Pete, I originally was going to paddle all the way up the north coast to Tulacra and then paddle across the Dee estuary to New Brighton.
Okay.
And then go down the Mersey there. But the winds were so strong that the Coast Guard so wouldn't let me paddle across the Dee estuary. So I had to paddle up the Dee estuary into Chester. And that was one of the two most difficult stages, actually. The Dee estuary is a pretty grim place, if I'm honest.
Is it really?
Full of, it's not as a casual glance.
No.
It's full of post-industrial wreckage, jetties falling in and so on.
Okay.
It's quite which on a paddleboard you have to be really careful of. You wear a waist leash and stuff, but not to get caught and stuff. And because of the tides, because I had a different plan, I had to leave Flint Castle, I think it was, at like 7:30 at night. So I'm heading off onto this up the Dee estuary. It's starting to go dark. The wind is blowing a gale again, and it's pushing me across to the far bank, almost around the kind of buttress that I needed to get past. And then I had to paddle up into Chester in the increasing dark and into the middle of the city. And that was quite sketchy just in terms of the physical conditions, but also sort of mentally it was quite hard work.
I was going to say, that sounds almost as though the sort of, it had stopped being about the distance and it started being about the mindset.
That day was just about getting it done. It was So I ended up in Chester about 10:30 and I managed to pull it out an horrible bit of the river. And that's the only night we stayed in a hotel. I said to Sal, I'm a bit done in here, generally, sort of physically and mentally. And so we stayed in a lovely hotel, the Hilton by Chester Racecourse that night.
Right.
But what I was coming to is the next day, I then had to paddle up the canal effectively to Ellesmere Port to replace crossing the Dee estuary. I got on the canal and the bloody wind again. I was thinking, I'll have a nice quiet day. I'm not on the open sea. The wind came howling down the canal. That was one of the few days where I thought I really could do without this. But my mate from school, who I used to fished with all my life together, Pete, turned up on his bike and he cycled alongside me on the towpath. And he got me through that day. I would have made it, I guess, because you just do, but he made it a really, a semi-enjoyable experience.
Well, absolutely.
Pint together afterwards. So the number of people who helped out like that were amazing, just getting through the difficult days. Yeah.
Do you think episodes and adventures like you've obviously I'm going to come back to it in a minute. This is just something in my mind. Do you think they've become over-commercialised? Because from what it sounds from your tale that you're telling us now, it was really about people, about the friends that were sort of metaphorically just grabbing you and pulling you along and taking you from one situation to another.
Yeah, and actually new friends, really, because I decided to do this paddle from my new hometown of Abersoch to my old hometown of Poynton. Initially, I just said to start, I'm going to do it without even working it out. And then started to plan it. Some of it wasn't, a lot of it wasn't that difficult. It was just about paddling, but quite a bit was. So as I got nearer to the date and even during the journey, I put posts out on Facebook and so on, and social media saying, I'm doing this bit. Can you help me? So, for example, Chris from the Snowdonia Water Sports, absolute superstar. You might see him downwind foiling down across the bay.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know him from Adam. I think Phil put me in touch with him. He escorted me down the Menai Straits, which is another pretty sketchy bit without company. And he was a superstar. And I know him quite well now. I'd surf with him occasionally on that. So he came out of nowhere. Then I put a message out saying, look, I'm planning on paddleboarding up the Mersey estuary from New Brighton to Runcorn. And technically you can't do it. I don't think anyone had done it at the time. It's too dangerous. No one will let you do it.
Right.
Because the tide is massive and fast there. And these two guys, one of whom actually commutes in a kayak up the Mersey estuary to work.
Cool.
And then a guy called Adam, who works as a safety and rescue guy on the Mersey. He's a pal of Christian's. He came along. The pair of them escorted me up the Mersey estuary, this frankly terrifying stretch of water where the water's moving about 100 miles an hour and the tides are about, there's huge boats about. And I'm a great believer myself in stretching the truth if it gets you to do stuff.
Well,
Adam was on his radio to the port authorities saying, I've got this guy who's paddleboarding around the whole of Britain and he's trying to get up the Mersey. And they were literally diverting these giant boats for me and my little paddleboard to go up there with these two guys next to me. So, yeah, people were absolutely great and they got me through it, definitely.
So, yeah. So you were physically alone, but absolutely your spirit was just wrapped up with the community, wasn't it? It was magic. Yeah. So, do you think you would do it again?
I talked to Emma, funny enough, from Abersoch Water Sports about potentially doing something. I mentioned it to her where I don't think I could do what I did. I played cricket and football all my life. I've surfed all my life. I've told you before, I've had a few joint problems all my life from this historic illness. And I'm not sure physically I could do it now. I was also in quite a bad car crash in my late 40s. So I've got a permanently dislocated collarbone. It's why I had to stop prone surfing and take up paddleboard surfing.
Oh, right. Okay.
Not that I was great at prone surfing, but so it was no great loss to the world of surfing, I can assure you. And those things have got a bit worse. I tried to resurrect my cricket career with Pathelli Cricket Club last year. Played 2 or 3 games, had great fun. But it hurt too much, being honest. And it's always hurt a bit all my life. So it's not like sort of wimping out. So I don't think I could do a paddle every day situation again.
No.
So what I might do is try and paddleboard all the lakes of Snowdonia. So just do one week, go home, do another one the next week. So, do Trousfinnet, Bala, any of the ones that'll let you. And just ideally get a little group who wants to come and do it with me on each lake, stretch it over a summer, maybe even 2 summers, not put the pressure on myself like I did with the hometown paddle, which was good. It was good pressure because it made me do it, but just do something that's a bit more manageable. And each one is a little project, raise a bit of money, go home, have a rest, and do another one. Yeah. So I might do that. I was thinking about it this summer. It won't happen this summer, but maybe next summer. Yeah.
And people can then sort of parachute in and do it with you, and they can get the kick out of that. They can help raise some money, and then they presumably won't feel under onus to have to do every single one.
No, exactly. So, they can do what people do. Like there's a family called the Smedleys, Claire and he's called John, her husband, and they just met me on Rill Beach one day, and literally clapped me along and stuff like that. And I made a lot of friends as a result of the hometown paddle. So in the same way, people, if we do the lakes one, people could either come along and paddle with us and whatever they want, or just turn up, and have a day by the lake and help us collect money with the buckets and so on.
And before we leave that, I'd like to sort of come back to you've gone up the Mersey. It's this north wind is still going against you. What's it like paddling in suburbia? Because
that was interesting. So from there onwards, once you got to Runcorn, got out and hopped onto the canal, literally right next to the estuary. It's kind of a seamless join that, and then paddled through Cheshire, and that was quite nice. That bit on the Bridgewater Canal, and just staying in some nice little farm campsites and so on, and then ended up going around the back of Old Trafford, the United's ground. I'm a big United. I've got a great picture of me standing on the United stand on my paddleboard.
I bet there's not many pictures like that.
No. And then carried on into the city centre, where again some great friends, Paul and Helen Moores, they met us and bought us lunch and so on. And I had my huge paddleboard in Deansgate Locks, all these beautiful cool bars. Yeah. And there's me in my wetsuit and this massive paddleboard. The bouncers were kind of, you can come
Is this guy real? For real?
Yeah, and then I had to paddle through the centre of Manchester. That was a little bit sketchy. There's one bit where you have to go under a sort of underpass near Piccadilly Station, which is famous for the sale of sexual activities, that particular area. Okay. So I paddled as quick as I could through there, came out the other side into East.
You didn't get a proposition then?
I didn't, no. I suspect I'd have to have paid. And then and then that's a really sketchy bit of the canal there, and there was a bunch of guys who were trying to do the right thing. They clearly wanted to turn away from the road while they were injecting drugs into themselves, but actually turned to face the canal as I paddled past. So I paddled past the guy injecting it into his groin, which is obviously very, very sad and everything. And
absolutely,
it did make me feel a little bit
uneasy.
But so there was a little bit of that bit of the urban bit wasn't great, but you were soon out the other end, and then all the way up to the High Peak Canal, I think it's called, and then the Macclesfield Canal, and then home, where a whole bunch of people from Poynton met me, which was amazing.
And Sally had accompanied you effectively mile for mile.
Yeah, well, probably more, because she would kind of try and find little spots where she could see me and give me a wave. So that de-estuary night, for example, she was probably in places where it wasn't great to be honest. She was getting onto little jetties and bridges, because she knew, we both knew it was not going to be an easy bit of the journey. So she just turned up and gave me a wave, and that just makes a massive difference.
Oh,
she was a superstar, still is a superstar.
Yeah.
And obviously she was worried, in a way I was just doing it. She had the worry bit, like, is he going to be all right? So in some ways it was probably harder for her, actually.
Yeah. And clearly challenges like this, from what you're saying, they don't, for you as an individual, they never leave you. They just seem to change shape.
And it's, as I say, it's made. I'm not the best at holding on to friends, if I'm honest. I'm always too busy doing stuff. It is. It's a weakness all my life. I've worked with some great.
If you want to be a pal, just do what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. But I did meet some great people, and that is the good. People talk about the negativity of social media. I neither use it or look at it like that. What it is great for is connecting with people long term. You might never see them again, but you have a connection. You see what they're doing, they see what you're doing. Little things that merge, a song you might both like or a view you like. You'll suddenly realise you've got that shared interest, and that social media is brilliant for that, I think.
Were you playing just gone through my mind. Were you playing music while you were paddling?
No, I'm not a fan of that, actually. I absolutely love my music. I love sitting in my upstairs lounge. I've got a record player like most middle-aged men have, as well as my other streaming stuff and everything. But no, I'm not a fan. I think if you're out, I'm not being judgmental. No. Turns you on. But for me, being there is the thing. Witnessing it, feeling it, hearing it where you are is the thing. I don't want some music that I might absolutely love confusing me. No, because I want to feel what's out there.
And you can catch that another time, can't you? It's as simple as that. So you clearly care about the place, about Abersoch, about your home where you live now, the beaches, the community. Do you think that's what keeps pulling you back into these new, bigger ideas? Obviously, the prospective paddleboard, the new paddleboard challenge, or do you think is it something else? Is it something absolutely core and in your DNA that just says, Kevin, today's a new day, got to have a new challenge?
Yeah, I don't think it's much about necessarily about new challenges. I've always liked change all my life. I didn't have a very linear career at all. I've done lots of different things. You listing some of them before, because I don't exactly get bored easily. I just like doing new stuff, and so I love waking up here. And the thing about new stuff here can be just paddleboarded up at Macross rather than Port Nigel, if you like.
Yeah.
It might be. I'm a big dweller. That's the other thing I love. I love dwelling. Despite being very active, I also love the exact opposite, which is dwelling. So sitting in a cafe with a coffee and a good book and so on. So sometimes it can just be, should we go over to the pub on the front at Abersoch and have a coffee there and sit and read in the sunshine there? So it's not. I'm not necessarily about challenges. It's just about doing something new every day and doing it in the sunshine, whether that's literal or metaphorical, in this beautiful place. I feel lucky every single morning to wake up here.
So do you feel there's an odd question, but again, in my mind, do you feel there's a responsibility that you've got to sort of, because you live somewhere like this and you are living the area, that you feel a responsibility to give something back?
I don't know if it's a responsibility, but I've always written all my life. So as well as whatever corporate or other jobs I've had, I've always written for magazines and so on. Had that as a parallel career. And as about 3 years before we're moving here, I took over the editorship of Abersoch Life magazine. And one of the reasons I did that was because I do like sharing how brilliant this place is and how beautiful. And, and there's so many different versions of it. A lot of, the place gets slagged off a bit on social media sometimes as being full of rich idiots or whatever, which is obviously nonsense, although clearly there is the odd one. But
what, rich or idiot?
Both.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. But there's so many different versions of it, isn't there? Some people are, I can't stand the village in summer. It's mobbed with people. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons we started.
The energy.
Yeah, it's buzzing and everything. But the real point behind that is you literally only have to walk half a mile and it's a completely different place. It's a beautiful, stunning, natural place, as well as to complement the kind of busy village and everything that's going on there. So I've always liked the idea of trying to share that and how great it is and what the sort of contrasting attractions of it are, the water sports, the beaches, the busy village, all the sort of eating opportunities, drinking opportunities, but then the ability to walk a few hundred yards and be somewhere stunningly beautiful with almost no one else about. So it's more about sharing, I think. And that's the same reason, to a degree, I run the Surf Check. I'm under no illusion, probably most of the followers aren't surfers, I don't think. I think of people who love seeing pictures of, like I used to, when I was sat in my office in Manchester, I used to love seeing a picture of here on the day. So I kind of do it for those people as much as for the surfers. I just want to share how cool and beautiful it is.
That's great. That's great. And I was thinking, because you're an adventurer, there's no doubt about it. Not everybody's going to do what you've done, and not everybody dare to do what you've done. One of our residents, or the residents of the village, is obviously Bear Grylls, and I thought to myself at the time when I was sort of preparing in my mind for our podcast, that it's interesting that Abersoch is a home to you and is a home to Bear Grylls. He's a very public face of adventure. And then there's you, the sort of quietly paddleboarding 200 miles without a camera crew. And I just thought to myself, different styles, but the same instinct. Just get on and do it.
Yeah, very nice of you to compare me to Bear Grylls.
He might say the same, actually.
Yeah, true. He did once compliment me on one of my boats, I must admit.
There you
We
go.
had a little bit of share. I had a little quad bike type boat.
Oh, did you?
Very cool, yeah. Called a Zigo. And he was a bit envious of that. But yeah, I think I'm about a factor of 1 million times smaller in adventure than Bear Grylls. But yeah, I think it's just a place that stirs you, isn't it? And it stirs you to do stuff, and it doesn't matter whether that stirring stirs you to swim 10 yards in the sea or to, paddleboard 250 yards. But I would say again, I'm not going to lie, I do also like the interest it developed. So when I did the paddleboard commute, that first one I was telling you about from Poynton to Stoke, I did have a BBC film crew.
Oh, did you?
And I did have a local radio station.
You superstar, you.
So I've always been quite good at getting publicity for stuff. I've always been a writer.
Right.
Always been, and it's kind of what, although I've done various different jobs, the thread running through them all has been not a salesman. I don't think I'm a very good salesman at all, but kind of someone who's good at raising awareness of stuff.
Sure.
And the positive bits. So that was the job I did in Stoke. about, it's a difficult city with lots of
Absolutely.
challenges.
Yeah.
I was working in regeneration there, and although a lot of that is physical stuff, organising building projects and development projects, which I've done on and off all my life, in reality, that's a process that anyone could do. I think what I've always been pretty good at is the bit about raising the awareness of places. So I managed the acquisition of the old Spode factory in Stoke-on-Trent, for example, and then put in place a master plan to regenerate that as a kind of mixed-use place with the kind of arts at its core. And that, again, and it's working really well. I moved on a long time ago, but it's working really well there. And I think some of that is about getting that publicity and awareness out there, which I've always been good at, working with the media and so on. In fact, I did a bit of work there with Keith Brymer-Jones, the potter who's doing the...
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
He obviously does the pottery throwdown programme there, and worked with him on the Stoke Meadow City of Culture bid, which was never going to be successful, but was important in putting the place on the map. So... yeah, so I again, kind of my role there was about sort of publicity and so on. I'm sure Keith's forgotten me, but I still remember him.
You remember him?
He was a top man. Again,
a
really top man in a situation where he didn't need to be as generous as he was. He was great, absolutely great.
And you nudged me here because I grew up in and around Stoke myself, and I was the live event compere for the National Garden Festival.
Oh yeah,
if you remember,
yeah,
that was 6 months. So that was an awesome sort of time.
Was that on
to be working.
What do you call it, Valley, Troria Valley?
Troria Valley, Festival Park.
I built a roundabout on Troria Valley. Not quite as glamorous, actually, but believe me, it took a lot of doing.
You were responsible for those bloody traffic jams all the time.
Was.
It's snowing up that the A55?
A500.
A500. Okay. So I'm going to sort of wrap up, but I'm going to bring back to Duncan because I think it's healthy that we come back to the core and sort of. First of all, to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to bring into this podcast that we haven't talked about that you think is worth just a message that sort of may motivate other people to do just what you've done?
Yeah, maybe not exactly that so much, more just a reflection on some of the stuff that people do. So I think the reason we're doing this is originally you'd asked Mark Durston, maybe, who owns Abersoch Life magazine and runs a lot of the races, the Sensation Group races. And he's done a pretty incredible job over the years.
Hasn't he?
He's had his ups and downs like anyone doing the sort of diverse range of things that he's done. But, he's run Abersoch Life magazine. It was its 25th anniversary last year. It's 26. It's now 26 years that's been running for. And that, irrespective of whether it's all right for it, does a brilliant job, isn't it? I think, of promoting the village and so on. And then he puts these races on every year. And that's a massive challenge. There's always competitors coming in. There's always new rules and regulations. He ran the Wakestock Festival. So Mark may not have wanted to do this podcast because he's someone who likes to sit in the background more.
So he said.
I definitely would hope that people reflect on and respect.
Doff your cap to Mark.
I say, he's had his ups and downs like everyone will have done doing something like that for that long. But to keep bringing as much activity and interest to this beautiful little place as he's done is pretty remarkable.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And ditto, we've now got, there's the magazine's now edited by Jess Wilson, and she's doing a brilliant job. The magazine gets better every issue. So it's more about people like that who are doing their bit, I think, to make this, to help people reflect on how beautiful it is and bring it to people's attention and promote it and hopefully support the businesses in the village and so on who need it in difficult times.
And they support it, and that's what makes it such an attractive, glossy coffee table magazine.
Yeah. Hopefully it supports them and they support it, and it's a really healthy relationship. So really it's that and ditto anyone who does similar stuff. The lifeboat fundraisers who put the
aren't they incredible?
Sal and I do a bit of hosting of events for the RNLI, the music quiz and bingo and stuff. But really, we just do the easy bit up front. These guys are working behind the scenes all the time, raising money. So it's folk like that, I think, if I was going to bring anything in, it's just hoping people sort of recognise and respect and reflect on what a great job all those people do.
Yeah, and I think that's, do you know, honestly, I think that's almost a thread that was woven and has been woven over the last 5.5 years into the Dunkers, because the Dunkers came out of Emma and Hattie, and they just had an idea, well, they were going to do something in the middle of COVID, and you weren't allowed to, you got to socially distance, you weren't allowed to get together, blah, 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 and they just sort of decided they'd do it. And, you know, for the first 6 or 9 months, there were 5 or 6 of us, and I was the first man there. That's why they christened me the Hoff, because I'd got these red trunks and never lived that down.
Yeah,
but,
that's another great initiative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really and if you don't do it, I think a lot of people follow you guys and sort of feel like they do it, but, you know, one place removed, if you like, so they're still in bed looking at the
or going to have a cold shower. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So more power to your elbow.
And the thing is, it's just like you and Sally having granola in bed. It's our daily routine. You got to do it, because your day wouldn't be complete if you didn't. So if you were going to dunk, where would you dunk, and who would it be with?
Well, I sort of think I do a version of dunking, because I try and get in or on the sea every single day.
So well, there you go.
For me, and it sounds trite probably this, but it would be on Poynton, getting in there, spending a day there, getting my son over from America. We were big surfing buddies. I miss him every single day. He went over there to play football and he has ended up back there playing football and coaching football now. So I miss him enormously. So there with Laurie and his wife Sarah, my daughter Sophie, her little kids Charlie and Summer and Sal, and just having a little gang of us on the beach for the day, have a dunk, have a surf, have a bodyboard, have a little bonfire in the evening and a barbecue, and just have a little family time together.
That's got to be the life, isn't it?
Best place in the world. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going to ask you, my last question is what somebody else has actually left for you, because I'm going to ask you when we're off air to give me a question for the next interviewee, because we'll never tell you who it was, but I just hold on to those questions. And it's a very simple one for you, or very simple to ask, but it's probably a big one, and that is, who inspires you?
I mean, probably in terms of helping develop what I think must be in you a bit already.
Yes.
But that love of water, I think, came from my dad in a more sort of practical sense. We built a mirror dinghy together when I was about 5 that we used to sail off the beach here. But my mum also, you know, as I said, she was quite an alternative character, quite ahead of her time, and very much, and sort of dabbled in Eastern religions and so on. And, you know, I think if I'm anything, I'm not religious. I'm probably a pantheist, you know, someone who believes in the earth having a sacred quality rather than deities, and so on. So she probably indirectly inspired me to think maybe differently about how the world works and what really is, you know, your own personal version of spirituality and soulfulness. But also, she was a big sailor. She taught me to sail. My dad couldn't do it. He got angry too quickly. He got it wrong. So, yeah, to be honest, my mum and dad are probably the ones. I played cricket and football with my oldest brother for a lot of my sort of teens and 20s. And he's a very different character than me, but got a great sense of humour. And that kind of helped me realise that humour can be a really powerful tool in trying to kind of promote things and sell things. So it's kind of family stuff.
I was going to say that's
ditto. Sally, you know, Sally's a much calmer, quieter character than me, but she's also very kind of resolute and sticks with people and so on, and stays friends with people and follows stuff up in a way that I don't, but she at least helps me do it better than I might do. My daughter, absolute superstar. She's the most grounded person. I know she has a very kind of, you know, challenging career. She works at a very senior level in sales and stuff, and yet she's the most grounded person I know. And ditto Laurie, my son, who, you know, his football adventures have taken him all over the world, really. And, you know, that's inspired us to do stuff. An 18-year-old lad went off to Milwaukee to play football when his dreams of playing for Manchester City were taken away, and he just found a way and, you know, played professional football for 10, 15 years, something like that. So all those people, it might sound naff to describe your family.
No, not at all.
They've all inspired. Hopefully I've put a bit into them as well that's come back at me. But yeah, mum, dad, family of what's inspired me most. And then maybe Wayne Coyne, the lead singer of the Flaming Lips, my favourite. Yeah, don't quite know how or why, but he's been
That's a left fielder.
Yeah, a musical thread through my life. Them and The Cure are still my two favourite bands, much as I love new music.
Tremendous.
So yeah, Wayne Coyne and Robert Smith have also inspired me.
Well, I really, really enjoyed this chat, and I can only just say one thing, and that is, I hope the Dunker spirit goes with you. Thank you
very much. I've loved it, even if I've rambled on. I'm sure hopefully people got a sense of stuff. So thank you.
They'll listen
More power to the Dunkers.
Thank you. They'll listen to the end. I promise you that.
Good.